Hi, welcome to another episode. Today, I want to talk about forgiveness. Now, I'm going to talk about this way differently than I did in the past. In fact, I'm going to put sort of a taboo spin on it. So, forgiveness always requires two people to participate. It should never be a one-way decision or a one-way state of being where somebody does you wrong, or they commit harmful acts towards you, or they abuse you, they neglect you in some way, shape, or form. The forgiveness requires that the other person not only apologizes sincerely, but is able to show based on who they are, and if they've done the inner work, if they've done the inner healing, to start to understand why they do these sorts of things or why they inflict harm onto other people, especially their children, because usually it all starts in the home. It all starts with your immediate family. And when I say immediate family, I mean usually your parents. It always starts with the parents. Sometimes it's one parent more than the other parent that's responsible, but usually it takes both parents. And the reason why I feel the need to bring this up is because even though in other countries, to do what I'm doing right now, to say what I need, so to say what I feel like I need to say right now, would be illegal in other countries. You cannot speak against your family. You can't break away from your family. You can't, I think in some instances, you can't move out of your parents' home, or you can't move out of whatever your parents' living situation is until you are married, right? I mean, you've probably heard this once from a Bible verse, right? That, I mean, I don't even know what the exact Bible verse was, but it was talking about that a man is not to leave his parents until he is married, right? Especially when it comes to the woman, right? Because according to religion, the woman is the weaker sex, and the woman is supposed to stay at home and be submissive to their husband, and like all that kind of stuff. And even though it is illegal in other countries to do it, to not only break away from your family, but to choose not to forgive your parents. In the United States of America, even though it is legal and you can do what you want, there is still this family enmeshment problem that we have in this country. There is this stigmatized response to adult children. Well, I mean, they're adults, they're not children, but adult children that cut their parents out of their life completely, or maybe they cut out one of their parents out completely. And people are often ostracized for it, or they get judged pretty harshly for it, because who's going to take care of your parents when they're old, or who are going to take care of your parents right now as they're getting old and they're falling apart. And sometimes people ask me, well, why don't you have kids? And I'm like, well, I don't have kids. And to be honest, I'm not even sure that I really ever want kids. And they go, well, then who's going to take care of you after you're old? And see, that's kind of like, that's kind of the problem that I think that's part of the biggest societal problem that we have in this country, is this overall sense of entitlement, right? People typically have children to fulfill whatever unfulfilled needs that they had, usually came from their parents, right? And it's generational, right? Like, it usually comes from their parents and their grandparents and their great-grandparents, and it just becomes a nonstop generational pattern of abuse. And so going back to forgiveness and what it really means to forgive, forgiveness is actually a very healthy component of the heart chakra, or the heart energy center. It's a very healthy byproduct of love and compassion and empathy. Sorry, I don't know if two of those things are the same thing, but forgiveness is often a byproduct of that, only under the right circumstances. I do not believe in voluntary forgiveness anymore. Without some kind of proof that whoever the perpetrator is have changed and they've done a lot of healing, and they're more self-aware now of where all these actions that they've inflicted on you came from. Usually it came from their parents. Without that, there's no room in the world for forgiveness. And that's okay. I think a large part of why forgiveness can be very unhealthy is because a lot of people think that they have forgiven their parents, or that they've forgiven their perpetrators. And the reason why they think that they've forgiven them is because that's what society pushes on people. That's what people in their family have pushed on them. That's what some of their friends or so-called friends have pushed on them, that you need to forgive. Forgiveness is more for you than it is for the other person. You are only hurting yourself if you don't forgive. Or you are obligated to forgive because religion says it, or the Bible says it, or some kind of religious conditioning forces you, like threats of going to hell, or God's going to, God, whatever, is going to be angry at you, and wouldn't want to we wouldn't want to piss God off, right? We wouldn't want to make him angry. And some of you guys that grew up, maybe not grew up Christian, but grew up under the under the Christian, I forget what the word is, but under the Christian religion, right? Under the Christian narrative. You've probably heard this quite a few times. I know that I was hearing it a lot when I was going to church 15 years ago. Some of you guys are probably familiar with the Beatitudes, right? And you've probably heard the saying before that, if you've forgiven somebody once, then forgive them 700 more times. In other words, and I don't think that some of them are even aware or are even cognizant that this is actually what they mean. But what it actually means is, if somebody abuses you once, let them abuse you 700 more times. And unfortunately, because of all the religious and societal conditioning that we've been under, I think it's been really hard for a lot of people to distance or to break away from their families, either by going low contact, right? Which is only seeing your parents on occasion, right? Or wishing them happy birthday, or they wish you happy birthday, or you wish them a happy Father's Day or a happy Mother's Day, or you go see them for holidays, or they decide that they've had enough, right? They've had enough of the abuse. They've had enough of the disrespect. They've had enough of having their boundaries stepped all over. So they decide to go no contact, or they decide to just cut their parents out completely. But a lot of people are really afraid to do that. And I think the reason for that is that their nervous system still recognizes whoever it was that took care of that, whose job it was to take care of them when they were younger. They started to, your nervous system, i.e. also your inner child, looked up to that person and revered them as sort of like a godlike figure. Like, I don't feel safe, I don't feel protected unless I am still in a relationship with this person, right? It's usually the safety that they feel, even though their safety resides in chaos, or it resides in dysfunction or lack of harmony, and more disrespect, more abuse. And the same thing goes with religion. That's why a lot of people, especially people that are Christians, cling on to their faith, is because they sort of still see that protective figure in the God that they serve, right? Because not a whole lot of people are very intuitive and really trust themselves very well, because they were taught throughout their whole life that that was wrong, or that, you know, do not follow your heart, because your heart could be misled, or your heart is overall sinful, right? Or even if you didn't grow up religious and you were just taught that, you know, you're stupid and you lack life experience and you need somebody to show you how to do X, Y, and Z, and you know, you need to go on this path, or you need to go and do this, right? I think also the lack of trust in ourselves, right? I think the heart chakra and the third eye chakra, which is responsible for your intuition, your ability to see the big picture, your ability to see through people, your ability to connect to the divine, the universe, or whatever you want to call it. I think those two things go hand in hand. And I think that the more that you properly balance your heart chakra, I think you'll start to see through people a lot more. And so as I'm wrapping up this video, what is a good substitute for forgiveness? Well, that all that anger and resentment that maybe you've been told to repress or bottle up for so long, especially under the guise of forgiveness, you need to first give yourself permission to feel through those. I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up here because I have so much to say, but I'll see you guys in part 2.